Seeking forgiveness and a second chance, that's what she came for. But some things can't be undone. A year ago, I discovered my wife's affair. I didn't confront her. I didn't demand explanations. I didn't give her the chance to lie to me one more time. Instead, I packed my bags, filed for divorce, and left quietly without a fight, without a scene, without looking back. I moved to a quiet town in the hills, far from the life we built, far from the memories that no longer felt like mine. I told myself I wasn't running. I was just choosing peace over pain. Maybe that was a lie. Maybe it was survival. Either way, I never looked back. Now, after all this time, she's standing at my doorstep, eyes filled with regret, voice shaking as she whispers the words I once would have given anything to hear. But that was a lifetime ago, and the man who loved her doesn't exist anymore. We met in our mid-20s, the kind of love that felt effortless, like we were meant to find each other. She was sharp, ambitious, and had this way of making every room brighter just by walking in. I was steady, reliable, the kind of man who believed in commitment, in building something real. After 3.5 years of marriage, I thought we had it figured out. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or at least that's what I told myself. I worked as a director in a technical sales company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well and gave us a comfortable life. My job required travel, sometimes for weeks at a time. But I always came back, always made time for us. And she seemed to understand, or so I thought. At first, everything was normal. She'd call me when I was out of town, send me photos of our dog curled up on the couch, tell me she missed me. I never had a reason to doubt her. But looking back, the signs were there long before I noticed them. The late nights started gradually. She'd say she was stuck at work finishing up reports or meeting with clients. I believed her. She had always been career-driven, always wanted to prove herself. Then she started going out more weekend brunches with friends I'd never met, spontaneous plans that didn't include me. She stopped waiting up for me when I came home, and when I asked why, she'd just say she was exhausted. The little things changed, too. She started dressing differently, not just for work, but all the time. New clothes, new perfume, a sudden interest in the gym after years of avoiding it. I noticed, of course, I just didn't question it. I wanted to believe she was doing it for herself, that's what she told me, and I accepted it without hesitation. Then, it was her phone. It became glued to her hand, and when it wasn't, it was face down on the counter. She used to send me texts throughout the day, small things like, "How's your meeting going?" or "What do you want for dinner?" But those texts stopped. When I'd message her, sometimes hours would go by before she responded. And when she did, the warmth in her words was gone. I ignored the signs. I blamed stress. I convinced myself that every relationship goes through phases, that we were just going through a rough patch. And maybe, deep down, I just didn't want to admit what was happening. The first real gut punch came when I got back from a work trip earlier than expected. I had taken a red-eye flight home, excited to surprise her. I walked into the house, expecting to find her asleep. Instead, I found her standing in the kitchen, startled, like I had caught her in the middle of something. "You're home early," she said, forcing a smile. There was something off in her voice, something guarded. I looked around. The dining table was set for two, a wine glass half empty. The faint smell of expensive cologne lingered in the air, but it wasn't mine. She said a friend had come over, just a coworker, someone she'd been mentoring. I wanted to believe her, so I did. But something in her eyes told me that night was the beginning of the end. It wasn't just about trust anymore, it was about denial. Because the truth doesn't wait for you to be ready. It just shows up and changes everything. I don't know what made me check that night. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the way she avoided my eyes when she said goodnight. Maybe it was the feeling in my gut that had been growing for months, a silent warning I kept pushing aside. She had gone to bed early, claiming she was exhausted. But when I walked past the bedroom, I saw the faint glow of her phone screen under the covers. She wasn't asleep. She was texting. And when I stepped closer, I heard her whisper something. "I can't wait to see you again." I stopped breathing for a second. I told myself I must have misheard, that she was talking to a friend, that there had to be another explanation. But deep down, I already knew. She had always been careful. Her phone was locked. Notifications were silenced. She never left it unattended. But that night, maybe because she thought I was already asleep, she made a mistake. She set it down just for a moment, screen still lit. And I saw his name. It wasn't a random friend. It wasn't a coworker she barely spoke to. It was her boss, the man she had been spending late nights at the office with, the one she always talked about so fondly, the one she insisted was just a mentor. Something inside me snapped, not anger, not heartbreak, just clarity. I walked out of the room, sat in the dark living room, and stared at nothing. I could have checked the messages, could have woken her up, demanded an explanation, forced her to admit the truth. But I didn't need to, because I already knew what they would say. Instead, I sat there for hours, replaying every moment from the past year, fitting the pieces together like a puzzle I never wanted to solve. The sudden work dinners, the secretive texts, the way she pulled away little by little until the space between us became too wide to ignore. By the time the sun started to rise, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to fight for someone who had already chosen someone else. I wasn't going to demand answers that I already knew. And I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing she had broken me. So, I did the only thing I had left. I left. I didn't leave in a rush. There was no slamming doors, no shouting, no desperate pleas for the truth. Just quiet decisions made in the early hours of the morning in a house that no longer felt like mine. I packed only what I needed: clothes, my laptop, my documents, left my wedding ring on the nightstand. No note, no explanations. I didn't need to say anything. She'd know. Before I walked out, I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking back at everything I was leaving behind. The framed photos on the wall, the couch where we used to sit together, the life we built, or at least, the life I thought we had. I wanted to feel something. Anger, sadness, nostalgia, but all I felt was relief. I checked into a hotel that morning, booked a one-way ticket out of the city by noon, and by evening I was gone. Just like that. No messy goodbyes, no begging for closure, just silence. But the thing about silence is that it's louder than words. The calls started that afternoon, first one, then 3, then 10. I didn't answer, I didn't need to. The messages followed. Where are you? What's going on? Please, just talk to me. She didn't confess, didn't say sorry, didn't even ask if I knew, because she already did. I blocked her number before she could send another message. The divorce was filed within the week. No messy fights over money, no drawn-out battles over who got what. I didn't want the house, the furniture, the memories. I just wanted to be done. She tried to call through mutual friends, sent me emails filled with excuses, half-hearted attempts to explain away what she did. I never read them. Because once you've seen the truth, explanations don't matter. A new life begins. I moved to a small town in the hills, a place where no one knew me, a place where I could be just another stranger in a coffee shop, another face in the crowd. For the first time in years, I woke up without checking my phone, without wondering where she was, without feeling like I was fighting for someone who had already given up on me. The nights were the hardest at first, lying in a bed that wasn't ours, in a place that didn't feel like home. But every morning the weight on my chest got a little lighter. I focused on work, started running again, picked up old hobbies I had forgotten. I became the man I used to be before I convinced myself that love meant losing pieces of myself to keep someone else happy. And slowly, I started to feel whole again. For an entire year I didn't look back, not once. I had left that life behind, or at least I thought I had, until one day she found me. It had been a year of silence. A year of rebuilding, a year of finally feeling like myself again. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't broken, I was just free. Then, one afternoon, I walked out of my usual cafe, coffee in hand, and saw her standing across the street. For a second, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe it was just someone who looked like her, a stranger with familiar features. But then she turned and our eyes met, and I knew. She had found me. She looked different, not in the way time changes people, but in the way regret does. Her posture wasn't the same. There was no confidence in the way she stood, no warmth in her smile. She looked lost. She walked toward me hesitantly, as if she wasn't sure if she should, as if she knew she had no right to. "Hey," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "I've been trying to find you." I didn't respond right away. Just watched her, waiting, letting her feel the weight of the silence between us. She shifted on her feet, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous habit I had once found endearing. Now, it just felt like a stranger's gesture. "I know I have no right to ask, but can we talk?" I studied her face, searching for the woman I had once loved, but she wasn't there anymore, and neither was the version of me who would have cared. "Why now?" I asked, my voice even controlled. Not angry, not warm, just indifferent. She swallowed hard, eyes darting to the ground. "Because I made a mistake." I let out a slow breath, waiting for her to continue, even though I already knew what she was going to say. I don't know what I thought. I convinced myself that I wanted something different, but I was wrong, and by the time I realized it, you were already gone. There it was, the truth, wrapped in regret, delivered too late. She wasn't here because she loved me. She was here because she lost what she thought she had with someone else. And when that didn't work out, when reality didn't match the fantasy she chased, she came looking for the man she had thrown away. I nodded slowly, letting her words settle. "Yeah, you were wrong." Her lips trembled, her eyes pleading. "I never stopped loving you." That's when I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty, but because I knew better. "You didn't come here because you love me," I said, my voice steady. "You came here because he didn't love you." She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Because she knew. She knew I was right. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to reach for me, to close the space between us, like she thought there was still a chance. But that's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't just break trust. It kills whatever love was left. She had made her choice a long time ago, and so had I. I took a step back, letting the distance become something permanent. "Take care of yourself, Emily," I said, and just like that I walked away. As I walked away, I didn't feel the way I thought I would. No anger, no sadness, no lingering pain. Just peace. She stood there, unmoving, watching me go, probably waiting for me to stop, to turn around, to give her some sign that there was still a part of me that cared. But there wasn't. Because the truth is, she wasn't standing in front of me because she loved me. She wasn't here because she wanted to fix things. She was here because her plans fell apart. Because the future she thought she was walking into didn't turn out the way she expected. And when she realized that, she went looking for the only man who had ever truly loved her. But I wasn't that man anymore. I didn't need closure from her. I didn't need an apology to move forward. I had already given myself everything I needed the day I walked out of that house and never looked back. She made her choice, and I made mine. And if there was any real justice in the world, it was this. She was finally feeling what I had felt a year ago. Loss. But the difference? Mine had healed. Hers was just beginning. Some people don't regret cheating. They regret losing their stability, their safety net. The person who always stood by them, even when they didn't deserve it. She didn't come back because she missed me. She came back because she missed the version of herself that existed when she was with me. The version that felt safe, secure, wanted. But that version of her didn't exist anymore, and neither did the version of me that once would have taken her back. And that's why you never wait for someone to realize what they lost. If they truly loved you, they would have never risked losing you in the first place. So if they ever come back, just remember this. They don't miss you, they miss the way you made them feel. And that's not love, that's regret. And regret? That's not my problem anymore.